Summer is the most popular time of the year for taking pictures. And in this edition of Jules Voto's Photo Focus, I'm going to be giving you 4 tips on making your summer photography more successful. And at the end, I'm going to throw in a few tips on fireworks photography. Now, when I worked for a photo lab, we were busiest in the summer, with the kids home from school, people heading down to the beach, and traveling. People took a lot of pictures, and they still do. So let's get right into it. So first, protect your gear, especially at the beach. Now, years ago, I was doing a photo shoot at the beach with my Hasselblad, and the wind picked up, blowing sand all around, and it got into the mechanism on my 80mm lens, and it jammed. So really be careful. I would not recommend taking pictures at the beach on a busy day. And you learn through experience, but that it cost me a little bit to get that lens fixed. But also in the rain. I love to photograph in inclement weather. Snow, rain, fog. But in the rain, you want to protect your gear. Now, many modern cameras are weather sealed. And I've been out with my Nikon Z8 and several pro lenses and had no issues, even with the camera not covered, in the snow, in the rain, wind, and not an issue. But if you're shooting with an older camera or a film camera, I strongly recommend you protect your gear. And you can do that inexpensively. And this is something I got at B&H. It's a rain sleeve. And the one you see up on the screen here is a little bit different, but basically the same. They're very inexpensive. 2 of them for about $5. And this is my Nikon D810, which does have some weather sealing, but this is so easy to use. You just put the camera in the bag, and it's got a little drawstring here at the front. Okay, and you just put that around the shade, and press this little button here, and it tightens up around the lens. Now, I assume you already have a filter on your lens to protect that. And then there's a little hole at the back. I actually enlarged it to fit around the eyepiece. And you could put your hands in to operate the zoom, the other hand on the shutter release, and it works out really well. Now, if the camera does get wet, what I recommend is don't wipe the camera down. Don't rub on the moisture on the camera. Just kind of pat it dry. Okay, let me just give you an example of that. I think I got a handkerchief here. So if the camera's wet, don't do one of these, because what could happen, even if it is weather sealed, you could force that moisture in through the gaskets, possibly. So just kind of do like this. Just pat it dry. Same thing with your lens. The lens, you could just clean the lens the way you normally would. Of course, if it's raining, just get under some cover and clean the lens. Now, another thing that you will find in the summer is if you go from air conditioning out into a hot, humid day, your lens is going to fog up. You're going to get condensation on the lens, on the filter. Again, make sure you use a filter. And you just need to wait a little bit for the camera to acclimate to the outdoor conditions. And it's a good idea to take that lens shade off while that's happening. You can put the lens shade back on, but that'll allow the filter to get acclimated to the humidity a little bit quicker. Okay, I don't recommend you try to clean off that condensation. Just let the temperature equalize. Okay, and again, if you are going to the beach, again, stay away from a windy day, but protect your equipment there as well. When I take a camera to the beach, and I don't do it all the time, I will put it in a plastic bag, in a case, and put it over the back of my chair. I don't want it close to the ground. I will then take it out, take some pictures, and then put it back. I have walked into the water to take pictures of my kids when they were little and my nieces and nephews. And when I do that, again, I'm careful to keep the camera up high because people may be splashing in the water. And salt water is worse than rainwater for the camera. You don't want to get it soaked in rainwater. Not a good idea. So I think that's one of the most important things. Make sure you protect your gear. Okay, so number 2, keep it light when traveling. Now, I have gone on vacations with a lot of equipment. And it's nice to have everything you think you will need with you, but a lot of times you take more than what you need. And I'm one who gets up early in the morning and goes out walking, shooting pictures. And it's much nicer to travel light. So what I recently have done, I guess within the last couple of years, I picked up this 24 to 200 Z-mount zoom, which I use on either my Z6 or my Z7, and it works out great. And Canon and Sony and all the other manufacturers have similar focal length lenses. Nikon also has a 28 to 400 that I have never used it, but supposedly it's very nice. I prefer having something a little wider at the wide end, so that's why I like the 24. Now, what equipment you're going to take really depends upon where you're going and the type of pictures you want to shoot. If it's just a family vacation and you want to get pictures of the kids and other family members, something like this, the 24 to 200 works out really well. And you have that 200, let's say you go for a boat ride and now there are some dolphins and you want to get pictures of them. It's nice to have that longer focal length available. And these lenses are so much more compact than, let's say, if you took a 24 to 70. Normally I shoot, in a lot of my work, I shoot with a 24 to 70 2.8, and I also have a 70 to 200 2.8. Well, I can't show you that lens right now because that's filming me. Now this is a 70 to 200 f4 f mount, so it's not as big as a 70 to 200 2.8 Z mount, but you can see it is a good bit smaller than this 24 to 200 Z mount. So it gives you a nice range, and I would recommend, using a zoom like that. Also, occasionally I would go out with a backpack, and it's all right, a backpack is easier to carry than a bag on your shoulder, but what I recommend, especially if you're trying to go light, is get one of these. Get this waist pack. This holds a lot of gear. It'll hold an extra body. I can show you. This is a Lowell Pro. And it's got some dividers inside. I don't know. I think I added some extra dividers or I took some out. I don't even remember. But I configure it the way I want for the particular equipment I'm carrying. And I never carry that much. So, tip number 2. Keep it light when traveling. You will enjoy your trip much more. You'll be able to walk more and get more pictures. And just look for a nice zoom that gives you a good range for the type of photographs you'll be shooting. If you're going to be going into buildings and let's say churches, if you go to Europe or anywhere for that matter, you're going to want something a little fast, a wide angle, maybe a prime with some speed, a 1.8 or a 1.4. So, keep that in mind if you're going to be shooting indoors. This lens, this 24 to 200, it starts out at f4 and it ends up at 6.3. So it's not the greatest lens for available light photography. Okay. Tip number 3. Be safe. If you've never been to a location before, just do a little bit of research. The government publishes travel advisories for various places. Be aware of that and try to stay away from an area that the government doesn't recommend you travel to. You don't want to put yourself in danger. You don't want to have your equipment stolen. So just be careful. Even if it's in a place you lived your whole life, know where to go and where not to go. Be careful at night. I like to do street photography. And I do a lot of it, usually with a wide angle lens, sometimes with a 28 on my camera. And I photograph people. I try to do it without them knowing, because you don't want to run into a situation where there's a confrontation. But be especially careful. If you see a drug deal going down, just look the other way and walk the other way, and keep yourself out of trouble. And finally, tip number 4, expose correctly. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, especially if you're at the beach. When I worked at the photo lab, and we would get all that film back in from people's vacations, and where I lived at the time in Philadelphia, everybody would go to the Jersey Shore. And they would come back with all this film, their kids playing in the water, at the edge of the water, in the sand. And invariably, the kids look like silhouettes in many cases. Because what was happening is you have all that bright light coming from behind. And here's an example of a picture like that. And you get no detail in the faces, in the bodies. So what do? Well, you move in closer, take a reading off the person, use a spot meter reading, because all that bright light is going to confuse your meter. Even today, with the great matrix metering and segmented metering, whatever the manufacturer wants to call it, in our cameras, they are fooled by a lot of bright light, especially if the subject doesn't mostly fill the frame. Now, in this image here, you could see I moved in. It was a tight shot of my niece on the beach, and it worked out. You could also use fill flash. If you're familiar how to use that, do that. I will do a video on properly using fill flash. It's much easier today with today's cameras. When I used to shoot weddings, I always used fill flash, but it was fully manual camera and a fully manual flash. But as long as you know your flash and you know your subject distance, it works out well. But we'll do a video on that in the future. Okay, so what about fireworks? Okay, I'm recording this right before July 4th. So, of course, there's going to be July 4th fireworks in most of the United States, most of the bigger cities, and even in the small towns. So how do you properly photograph fireworks? Okay, so it depends a little bit on, do you have a digital camera or do you have a film camera? It's much easier with a digital camera only because you can see your results right away. And if you need to make some changes to your exposure, you can do that. In the old days, you did a lot of bracketing. Okay, but as a starting point, let's say try to use a ISO or a film speed of 200 as a starter. You could go to 400. Pick an aperture, let's say f8, f11, and you want to have your camera set for bulb so that when you press the shutter release, the shutter opens, and you keep that shutter open for a few bursts of fireworks. Now, this image here I shot at the shore, and I think my exposure was like 1/5 of a second. So I was able to capture one burst, and it's really not that great a shot. But it works out much better, like you see here. I didn't take this picture, but this is multiple bursts, and it just looks so much better. And then also, if you could, try to have something in the foreground, something that will be silhouetted in the foreground, a building, a tree, people, whatever may be there. So position yourself, find out where these fireworks are going to happen, and then find a good spot before the firework display starts. Now, also, as far as your camera, make sure you're on a tripod. Now, you could hand hold with a slow shutter speed, but you're not going to be able to hand hold when you have the camera set for bulb, because that shutter is going to be open for several seconds. So for a film camera, make sure you use a cable release. So you'll have the camera set to B, press your cable release, the shutter opens, and when you felt like you recorded enough, let the shutter close. on a digital camera, this is a Nikon D810, you're going to use electronic release, but the same thing. Set it for a bulb exposure, set the camera to B, press your release, and when you recorded when you think you recorded enough, let the shutter close. And then of course you could check your results right away and see if you need to adjust your exposure. And I recommend shooting digital, shoot raw. Oh, one other thing, important thing I forgot to mention, don't use autofocus if you have an autofocus lens on your camera. Focus manually at infinity, okay? And just keep it there. And check it from time to time as you're shooting. With a film camera, a manual focus film camera, they have a hard infinity stop on most lenses, so you can just set it to infinity on the lens and then just shoot away. Okay, so that is it for this video. I hope it has helped you in your summer pictures. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. If you have any better suggestions for fireworks photography or shooting at the beach, please, I'd love to know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. A lot of times I may have missed something and people will make a comment and I'll say, yes, you're correct. I kind of missed that. So I have no issue with people correcting me when I'm wrong. So I normally publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So I will talk to you then.